Welcome everyone tonight. My name is Kim Case and I'm going to be presenting Classroom Renovation, Rethinking Your Classroom Through Technology, and talking about the design process as well as cell phones and global projects and how you can think about things differently in your classroom and increase the teaching and learning that's going on through using global projects and cell phones. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video camera, so I'm going to focus on the slides. And before we get started, I want to let everybody know that I have a Livebinder that I have created, and I'm also going to point the full link in the chat for you, so you can click on that and follow up with that after the session, and you can share that out with anybody. Has all the resources that I'm going to talk about and more on design thinking and some of the things that I've done in the past to complement what we're going to talk about tonight. And right now I'd like to know where you're joining from. So if you could click on the second laser pointer tool, which is the second one here, right here on the whiteboard tools next to the map on to the left. If you could click on the second tool and then put your location on the map, I would greatly appreciate it, so I know where everybody's joining us from. I know Peggy's from Arizona. I'm from San Antonio, Texas. And looks like the middle, Denver. Okay, I'll say the middle of the U.S. My geography is poor, but that's okay. Welcome, and welcome to those who are listening by recording, and I appreciate everybody attending this evening. If this is the Illuminate layout, and if you'd like to ask a question or talk at the end, I know it was, if you'd like to talk at the end of the session during question and answer, you'll click on the talk button. I won't have any polling questions tonight, but you found the chat window. And one thing about the chat window is that you can drag it out to make it larger, and you can drag it to the right side of your screen, like shown here. You click on the little arrow and then just drag it out. You can also increase and decrease the font. You can resize all of these different windows or pods and make them any size that you want for your screen. So I encourage you to do that to see all of the chat. And that's an incorrect place. I meant to change that. They're going to be this recording is going to be posted at kimcase.com. And let me get my slides here in order, and we're ready to start talking about what is the design thinking process. And I'm going to be presenting this at TCEA, and so this is going to be a great way for me to get my feet wet and to help you think about some of the things that we're going to be doing. And one of the things to keep in mind when you're thinking about the design thinking process is human-centered. It's based on the human beings, the teachers, the students, the administration on a campus, and when we're talking about using it in a school setting. And one thing is believing that we can make a difference and that we can use this process to come up with new and innovative solutions. And it's very collaborative because you're working with other teachers, usually on your campus or some on your grade level, as well as you can also be working with students. Depending on what process you want to revise that needs to be revamped, you can work with parents. The design thinking process is available for anybody to use and to think and kind of come up with new solutions to some of the problems that you might be having on your campus. and it's based on creativity and having confidence in your creativity and taking the opportunities to take challenges that you might be facing, difficulties, some obstacles, and make those into opportunities for design and redesigning some of the systems or processes that are currently in place for you and your students. What can the design thinking process be used for? It can be used to design curriculum. Not necessarily design it, but find new ways of using the curriculum. Maybe a certain curriculum isn't working, so you have to find a new way of doing things, finding a new curriculum to use, developing that curriculum. Maybe it's your classroom space, your layout, the physical layout of the classroom is not conducive to the types of projects you want to do. So you're going to have to think about where you want to place things so that things are more effective and conducive to creating an environment where students are thriving in their learning and what you're teaching them. There may be difficult processes or tools or systems that you want to revamp on your campus or in your department. And this is a great way to get together and to brainstorm some ideas, and I'll talk about the different steps of the process, and come up with some different ways of thinking about things and being very innovative. One example that comes to mind just very quickly is grades. We used to do grades by hand on a calculator, putting them in the grade book, and then when it was grade reporting time, we'd put in, add them up, divide by however many, and then weight the categories if we needed to put a weight to them, and then put them on paper and pencil, and then turn into the office. Somebody's probably said, there's got to be a better way to do this. And one of those ways that they came up with was a gradebook program using a spreadsheet. And it's involved to not just a spreadsheet for grades, it's also involved to doing progress reports, comments, and all kinds of things, and doing attendance within that gradebook program. So that's one way that the design process took something that was not working well and was very time-consuming doing grades on paper. I'm not sure if you taught in that era when things were all on paper, but somebody said there's got to be a better way. And they came up with a new design for that process. And this is the design thinking process, and it always starts with empathy, empathizing for the students or the teachers or whomever's going to be involved in whatever process you're going to be revising. And then defining what that is, and really discovering what is the issue at hand, and kind of pinning that down and creating many meaningful solutions is your ultimate goal. But before you can do that, you have to have a deep understanding of the needs of the process or system or layout that needs to be revamped, and getting inspired to create those new ideas, as well as the courage to be brave and to step out and to take risks with your design thinking. And you'll determine at this point, kind of in the brainstorming, what your goal is. What will success look like? What will the success be? And part of that comes from interpreting and defining exactly what your focus is going to be. It can be from observations, field visits, conversations, somebody saying, oh, I really wish that we didn't have to do such and such, and coming up with a new way. But you first have to define exactly what the issue is, but it must be a focus on the human beings, your students, your teachers. Ideation is brainstorming, and it means just generating lots of ideas, just like you do brainstorming with your students before writing projects or yourself before writing a paper. Brainstorming encourages you to think without constraints and bring up any kind of idea and share any kind of idea. There are no judgments on the ideas that are shared. It's just generating a bunch of ideas, just like you would any other brainstorming session. And deferring judgment when you're making those brainstorm ideas, when you're in that session talking about these things, this is part of it being very collaborative. And you want to encourage people to think outside the box, to think differently. And like Peggy mentioned, having a dress code policy or not, what are the pros and cons? Will that help solve our problem? Is that a direction we need to go? Can the parents afford the uniforms? And those kinds of things. You want to build on the ideas of others. You're going to stay focused on the topic that you're trying to solve, that you're designing for. And you want to have one conversation at a time and not get off on tangent, not have people speaking over each other. Be very visual. You can sketch and draw out your ideas and just trying to generate as many ideas as you can, and then you can eliminate and narrow down the process. And the next part is talking about experimentation with a prototype that you design, a prototype system, a prototype layout, a prototype policy. And that means building something, making it tangible, putting it into place, and where the students are learning and thriving in that environment. And at first, it may just be a very basic prototype, and a prototype is some type of model or representation of your idea. It could be a template, it could be just a guide. Usually a prototype is something that whatever you're trying to solve the problem for, it's one of the solutions that you try out, that you practice it, and you see if that's going to work for your solution. And you need to be open to failure, because sometimes you can learn a great deal more from failure than if you were successful the first time out. So failure is learning, and it is part of the process of trying out and testing your prototype that you create. And a prototype isn't necessarily a physical thing. If you're talking about processes and systems, but it could be a physical layout that you want to try and see if the students can get to the pencil sharpener better, and get to the learning stations better, and get to the laptops and see the whiteboard screen better in this layout. So there's a variety of ways that you can test your prototype to see if it's going to meet your solution. You can create a mock-up of whatever you're trying to solve. It can be a model. You can role play something out. You can create a type of diagram or storyboard or some type of layout, and then you're going to test it and see. And over time, the evolution of the concept is the final step. After you test it, and then you go back and you talk about it, and change happens over time. It takes a while sometimes, especially if you're dealing with a difficult process that's complicated. It may take a little bit longer to come up with it. And I agree. All of these different parts you're going to go in and out of. It's a reiterative process. You're going to repeat some of them. You may brainstorm, come up with an idea, try it, and realize, that just didn't work. So now we need to go back and see if we defined it clearly enough. Did we really find the essential item that we needed to redesign? Was it the grade book, or was it just turning in grades at a certain time? Whatever your issue is, you go back and you go in and out of each of these pieces, all of the several times. It's a reiterative process, but you're always doing it with empathy for the students or for the human beings that are involved in the redesign. And if your prototype is successful, then you determine if it was successful. One of the examples of that is Angry Birds. And the Angry Birds game, people try different solutions, and then if it doesn't work, they go back and they try it again. They try to solve and make sure the Angry Bird gets all of the pigs, I think they are. But that's trial and error, and that's a very simplistic view of the design process. But that's one thing. And you may be deciding, do we want to include gamification in our curriculum? And so the design process and the thinking in this model is a great way to talk about some of those suggestions. And like Peggy mentioned, whether it's working or not, and you evaluate whether you've met your goal that you originally had in mind, and determine if you were successful or not, or if it needs to be tweaked a little bit here and there. That's after the testing. And then if it didn't work out, then you go back and start back over and try and define it even more so, and come up with some different ideas than you had originally, or trying some of those ideas that you already suggested, just different ones. So that's the way the process works. It can be very simplistic or very complicated depending upon the solution that you're trying to come up with, but that's basically, those are the steps that you would go through, and just kind of repeating that cycle. So how can design thinking apply to the classroom? Well, you can determine if you need a new approach or a new teaching style for some content that you're trying. If the students aren't doing well with fractions, you may need to come up with another way. And so you brainstorm some different ways that you could teach fractions. Maybe you want to now include some video and have students come up to the whiteboard and share their explanation and their solutions. Or would a different technology be more beneficial? You want to make sure that you're always, whichever you're doing, that you're improving student achievement. And if that includes a physical layout modification or a modification to a campus policy, a process, or one of the systems, then you can apply the design thinking to help guide you through the process of revamping and redesigning that, so that redesigning is not such a difficult task. And part of the rethinking process, the redesign process, is how might we blank? And you ask yourself, how might we improve this or improve that? Instead of asking, should we, could we, can we blank, those are deferred judgment, and some people may be turned off and feel like there's not value to improving that situation or coming up with a new process. And keeping the human being in mind and empathizing for them, that they're struggling with an issue or that there needs to be a better way of doing things, can definitely help you when you're trying to focus your question and define it, if you use the words, how might we blank? And so when you're re-examining these things, that's one thing you're going to want to ask, instead of limiting yourself to can we, could we, because then you're going to be like, some people may be like, oh, well, maybe we should just leave it as it is and not really take the process seriously. And ultimately, what do you want to end up with? You want to end up with creative, innovative problem solving. You know, the old phrase, thinking outside the box, thinking about things differently, looking at them differently, and viewing them differently, but with an empathetic design mindset that, you know, there's something better than the existing system if that's what the issue is that's causing difficulty. So that's your ultimate goal, is to find a successful solution, and it may take one time through the process and it may take several. But ultimately, you're looking for a creative solution to the problem that you're redesigning. One way that you can rethink some of the ways that you do things in your classroom, if you'd like your students to achieve more or develop a global awareness, or be more communicative to each other as well as to you, is to rethink your classroom using technology. And the things that I'm going to share now are focusing specifically on the global projects and ways to use mobile devices, cell phones, in the classroom. So if you feel like you want to extend some of the teaching, or that your students aren't grasping some of the ideas in history or social studies, this is something that you may want to consider, is using global projects to help your students develop that global awareness. And you may want to consider redesigning your curriculum to fit some of these items into your curriculum, so that you're still, of course, preparing your students with your Common Core standards, or preparing your students with your district or campus standards, but yet you're also preparing them for success in the classroom and after graduation when they become an adult. So these are some of the ways that you might want to consider adding to your repertoire. Back in the early days, education started as a one-room schoolroom, and the technology they had at the time were like pencils, slide rules, rulers, the chalkboard, oil lamps, very limited. Then somebody said, oh, we can do things better, so they came up with the overhead projector, but your back was turned most of the time to your students. So they came up, somebody decided, oh, there's got to be a better way to do that, to share the content, and they came up with the computer lab, using laptops, making things a little more convenient to use. Everybody sign up for times and go use the computer lab. But that also isn't the best solution perhaps for your classroom, because you can't get into the computer lab. It's always being used. Then they decided to add in laptops and the smart boards and the projectors in the classroom. But as you can see, the only person that's using that technology is basically the teacher with the laptop, and of course the few students that are up at the smart board. So if you wanted to include the whole class, you're going to be limited with this setup. So you may want to redesign your layout, and this is from Edutopia, this picture, and as you can see, there's many, many things going on. Some are on a laptop, some are at a desktop, some are using cell phones, some are using a book. You know, I know some people don't consider that technology, but books and pencils, calculators, those are also things that you could include in your curriculum. And some are using, you know, flip cams, cell phones, as well as the smart boards and the whiteboards. And those are all great to put together to help your students incorporate more technology and develop a tenacity and a desire for using that technology. So now we're going to talk about specifically global projects, and one of them is Projects by Jen Wagner. And all of these links are in the Livebinder, so you don't have to take them down or copy them down. You can just go to the Livebinder and click on the cell phone one or the global projects tab. And if they're not in there, I'll check afterwards to make sure. But I wanted to make sure that you had access to these. And you can also save these slides at the end of the session. And the Projects by Jan, she creates great little projects, counting Oreos, looking through the window. She's fantastic, very creative, and all of these projects are geared to the pre-K to 6th grade classroom. But if you contact her and sign up for her newsletter, she shares tips, and she's very technology savvy and is great with coming up with global projects that lots of teachers participate in. Some are free, some are a minimal cost like $10, but I highly encourage you to check out some of the projects that she offers. And Civil War Sallie and Patriot Pete. Jim Begley, who is a social studies history educator, has his 2 children. They started with Civil War Sallie, it's that little bear, and his daughter Sarah was about 10 at the time, I believe. What classrooms would write in and request, and you can contact the wiki and get more information. But then they would send out the bear to you, Civil War Sallie or Patriot Pete, it's her brother. And then when you're going on a field trip, you take pictures and you share the experiences that Civil War Sallie had or Patriot Pete had with your classroom on the different field trips, and share that back. And you can also use it just as a resource for some of the pictures that they've done in it. Yes, similar to Flat Stanley. And Sylvia Tolosano, I believe, has a traveling bear project. A lot of people have different projects that are similar to this, but I thought this was really cute. And when you send it back, you send the pictures, and they post all of the pictures on the wiki. So that's a great one to check out, and that's all free. It just costs you to ship the bear back to them. And the DIN Connects is, that was a video, and it's not going to show in here because it's on my desktop. The DIN Connects is a community that's part of the DIN, the Discovery Educator Network, and it is free. Those in Texas and many states have the Discovery Education Services paid for by the state. Some have it paid for by the campus or district. But if you have the Discovery Education Services and United Streaming and all of that, then you can participate in some of these global projects. And right now, the current one is on the Olympic Games, so that you could have signed up if you signed up by Friday. But they have some every so often. And to participate in the projects, you would just scroll down the page, and then you can offer to start your own project or to join a global project that they're sponsoring and that they're having going on at the time. And to participate is free. They will have like webinars and field trips and those kinds of things, virtual field trips, and things to support the content that's going to be covered in the global project. But this is one that I encourage you to check out if you have the Discovery Services. The next one is Skype in the Classroom, and this too is free. And if you go to that website, you can join with other classrooms and make those connections, be in grade levels or specific content areas. You can also post if you'd like to do a specific project and ask for people to join your project. So that one's free, and I highly encourage you to check that out as well, communicating by Skype. And I'm also one of the co-hosts for Classroom 2.0 Live. We meet on Saturdays right here in Blackboard. And our website's at the bottom of the page, live.classroom20.com. We meet on Saturdays at 12 p.m. Eastern. And this is just one of the examples of a mystery Skype where you and another teacher get together, you meet over Skype, and you ask questions of one another and trying to figure out where the other class is located. That could be one of your mysteries. That's usually the way that it's structured. And you give clues but according to the questions that they ask, and see which class guesses the location of the other class first. So that's a great thing to check out, to do by Skype, and kids just love participating in this. And you can assign them different roles to take pictures, to ask the questions. You can generate all the questions prior to as a group, however you want to structure it, and you can talk about that with that teacher that you're going to connect with using Skype. And if you search on our website, you'll find lots of about Mystery Skype. Now I want to talk about using cell phones in the classroom. And cell phones can be a very innovative instructional tool. It's like a small mini computer. And you know, it's where we currently are, and things are going mobile. There are challenges that go along with going mobile, you know, viruses, having people on the network that shouldn't be on the network, text messages, you know, do the parents pay if their phone gets stolen, those types of things, and then looking at some of the resources that you can use. We're going to follow that. And as you can see from this graph here, you know, traditionally 10 years ago, mainly the computer technology was the desktop, with the administrators usually having the laptops. Then 5 years ago, it changed where now there's a little bit of mobile devices, more laptops and less desktops, to where 2 years ago, the laptops have definitely increased, and there's still a teeny bit usage of the cell phones in the classroom, the mobile devices, the netbooks, and laptops on laptop carts. And then finally, in today's society, the mobile devices are definitely taking over so that you can take them on a field trip, you can go outside and do projects outside on your campus. There are a variety of things that you can do with a mobile device that you're limited with if you had just the laptop, the desktop. And things to consider, you have the availability, you know, is it being already checked out when you're talking about technology for your classroom? Do you need to look at costs, grants, funding, ways to support these initiatives? The curriculum, you know, there's not a lot of curriculum already designed for using mobile devices and cell phones. That's great that you have a BYOD campus. That's excellent. And I think that the more schools are going that route because of the cost. You know, the hardware is very expensive, and supporting all of that and making it mobile is just sometimes cost prohibitive for many campuses. Then do you have the technical support? Is there resistance from the administration or from teachers or technology coordinators? You know, there are a lot of issues that you have to consider, but the ultimate goal is to improve student success, and cell phones can definitely do that because they can be very motivating, and most students have access to a cell phone and they're glued to them all the time, especially teenagers. So this is one way that you can incorporate a technology they're familiar with and that they enjoy using. So how are students using these cell phones? They use the social networks. They're sharing all kinds of things that they've created and photos. They post comments and blog posts. They have personal websites, and they remix some of the content that's out there, like videos. They take parts of it and make their own video and reuse it. But they're also seeking validation. You know, there used to be, you can post on YouTube, am I pretty? And then you have people would comment, no, you're not. You're ugly. And so there are some things that students want that validation, but they're not getting it. They're getting negative validation. They're damaging their own reputation or other people's reputation by posting pictures or saying horrible things. They're threatening and bullying other people online and creating false identities to do a lot of these things incognito. And so that's one thing to be aware of. But if you're using these with as an instructional tool and you're with your students, most of these things won't occur. But that's what they're doing in their off time. And I saw a presentation by Liz Kolb, and she quoted from this research site, this article, that the proportions whenever they text, even if they're not using proper English, but the more they sent text messages, the better their test scores were. And the younger the age that the students received a mobile phone, the better their ability was to read words later on and to identify vocabulary and patterns of sound and speech and spelling. And you know, that is amazing just from sending text messages, even if they're not, because they spell phonetically to shorten things in their text messages, and that really helps out with spelling patterns. because they know they're not spelling it correctly and they don't care, but they're still spelling it phonetically and using those speech patterns and spelling patterns that we have in the English language or any language. And one of the things to consider when you're using cell phones is the acceptable use policy, whether it allows your students to be able to use the cell phones in the classroom or not. You can use this as and become an advocate for your students. Talk to your students about the acceptable way to use cell phones, even if you can't use them in the classroom. But hopefully, eventually, you'll be able to use them in the classroom as an instructional tool, because kids just love them. And if your acceptable use policy does not allow for one-to-one or cell phones, then you can go to your administration and the IT people and plead your case and share why you want to use some of the different tools, including the ones that I'll be sharing tonight. And we know that the students have them, and that they have them with them, and that they're definitely valued, and the parents value them having them. In New York, these are two different articles about where students they're making money off of the students by storing their cell phones for them. They go in the morning, they pay from $1 to $6 a day for that place to hold their cell phone, and then at the end of the day, after school's over, they go to the bodega, the stores on the corner, and pick up their cell phones. And some of these vans are parked right outside the school because they can't get in the schools with the metal detectors, so they can't even store them in their locker. So they store them someplace so they don't have to walk home or travel without a cell phone. So the parents are paying for the phone, they're paying possibly for the phone, they're paying for the plan and the text messaging, and they're also paying now every day, every school day that is, so that the students can have their phones before and after school, and it may be the students themselves paying for it instead of eating lunch, so that they could have their cell phone access. So that's something to consider of how important it is to teach it to students and to parents. And why should you even bother? Well, the tools are simple to use. Your students are already familiar with them. Most of them, you're able to get the students to tune in to what you're doing instead of them tuning out or powering down when they enter your classroom. They can, I know that they have to store their cell phones off campus. You know that it just kills them to put that up there and say, here's my cell phone for the day. But students tune out, and this way you can help them tune in because they're going to be engaged and motivated just by the fact that you're using a cell phone. Even if you're just doing simple research on the cell phone, on a smartphone, that can definitely increase their activity and engagement. And we know they're going to Facebook, that some of them might be using Twitter, and they're definitely using YouTube. Some schools are actively allowing these things, but some schools are blocking them. They are the most infected websites on the internet. They have the most malware, adware, the most viruses associated with them, but they also can be great teaching tools as well. And many campuses and districts are blocking them, thinking that the district's complying with SIPA and COPPA and HIPAA and FERPA and all of those acronyms that have to do with privacy and records. But really, a lot of these sites don't need to be blocked that are blocked. It's just blocking for profanity and nudity. I see that by design thinking, you can revamp some of your curriculum aspects by using cell phones. And this can be one of your brainstorming ideas, one of your prototypes to try is to use cell phones to teach some of the same content, but you, instead of using going to the computer lab, if the students have their cell phones, then they can use their cell phones in the classroom, and you'll see that they're more productive because you don't have to everybody get up or everybody meet in the computer lab for fifth period. Everybody take all your stuff and let's go down to the computer lab. Oh, I forgot this, I forgot that back in the room kind of thing. So it can be more productive and save a lot of time just by having access to the cell phones. And so that may be one of the prototypes that you want to try out and see if that improves things, and see if your students achieve more. And we're familiar with QR codes. You see them just about everywhere now in different products. And a QR code is a code that has data on those little bitty squares, and it's read horizontally and vertically. Whereas the barcode, like on a can of soup or at the grocery store, that's just read horizontally, one direction. And the QR codes are two-dimensional because they're read in two different directions. And so these are becoming much more prevalent, but they're also a great way that you can link your content to different QR codes and put them on all kinds of things. Like one person had it on their head. You can do book reports and put the QR code that's linked to a YouTube, a book report posted to YouTube. You can put it to a video. Definitely. Lovely hairstyle. They're putting them on clothes, jewelry, all kinds of things. And you can put it in an old textbook that might be out of adoption that takes them to a video if they're having trouble with that mathematical algorithm or concept or science process. Then they can go and view a video that helps them through that. And you can advertise things by putting them on all kinds of baked goods. And if you don't have cell phones in the classroom, you can still use QR codes by using a webcam, just a simple webcam, desktop station, and you can have the students hold the QR code. There's a program. You can have the students just scan the QR code at the webcam. And QR Stuff is a great site to create the different. These are all of the different things that you can link your QR code to, and you can change the different colors. And then you just download that QR code and print it out, or take a screenshot of it and link it and put it to whatever you want to use it for. And so there's a variety of things, and this is a great way to incorporate. They need to scan it. And one of the best programs I've found for younger students especially is Enigma. Enigma finds that QR code very quickly and easily. You don't have to have it totally perfect in the box. And for younger students, that's really great when you're scanning those QR codes. Another one is called Aurasma, and it's similar where you're going to scan the QR codes, but it brings up a video, but it's like a 3D image. And you can link all kinds of things to different parts of an image already called, this is how you create it. You create what they call auras. And this is an example. He scanned that little tag on the little girl, and then it showed a part of the brain. In a 3D, and you can rotate it. So there's a lot that you can do with this app, and the students really take to it, and they're very creative, and they like using it, and it comes very easily and second nature to them. Like this butterfly, you can see how they scanned this picture back here, but it's as if the butterfly has taken flight. It's kind of become three-dimensional. And this is how you make it. Basically, you pick your content, you put the little triggers in the different places, and then you link it to whatever you want it to show. So it just takes a little practice to get used to it. And ThingLink is something that's similar. So These little pins here are linked to different things, different websites, different documents, different videos, and called a nubbin. You take your original image and then you just link different things to it. And you can link all kinds of things to this, where they only have to use just this one document, but yet they can go to different outside research sources for all kinds of things. And Evernote is another great tool that you can use to store things. Students can store items and access them from their cell phone, and you can create a folder and put different items in your folders, like these are my folders here. And you can put different things in the folders, and then they can access those documents from their cell phone, especially if they're at home and they're doing homework or something. And then when they're done, they can upload it back to that folder. You can share the folder with an individual student, or you can share the folder with the entire class, just however you want to set it up. But there are a lot of options that you can do with Evernote and sharing content back and forth. It can be a way to turn in all kinds of assignments. Sallie is another cell phone tool that you can use. You create different groups, and you can see here by this link, they can join just by going to that link. They can type in the link. They can join the group by sending a text message to this address, to this number, with this in the body of the message. And then they join, and your number is protected and their number is protected. You can use it on laptops, and it works on any cell phone. You can also desktop, any computer that's connected to the internet can use Sallie. So if you have students that don't have a cell phone, then they could use it strictly by accessing the website online. And I've kind of done that myself, used it on the web without using the cell phone. The next one, if you'd like to do polling and just kind of get a quick feedback of how students are understanding or grasping your content, is Mentimeter.com. They've gone to a paid version, but there's still a free version. It's multiple choice options only, and you can poll just about any question that you have that you want to ask them. And the responses show up immediately in a graph. And there's no limit. You can have like up to 200 students responding at one time. It also generates a QR code for each polling question that you develop. So the students can scan the QR code and then be taken right to the page to enter. Or they can go to bot.rs on the cell phone and enter this code here, this numeric code, and that takes them to that specific Mentimeter poll, and then you can show the results by accessing this link, and it gives you all of that when you sign up for an account, and all of this is free to use. Or they can just scan the code, the QR code. So it's a real great tool if you're using polling with your students, or before they leave, did you understand last night's homework? It doesn't tell you which student said yes or no, but it will tell you kind of a general if the majority of students are grasping what you're teaching. Infused Learning is another app that you can use where you can do quick assessments, and these are the different things. You can have an open-ended text answer where they have to write and type a response, and all kinds of things. So there's a lot to do in Infused Learning, and it is free, and it's compatible with all kinds of devices, basically any computer or device that accesses the internet. And Nearpod is another app that you can use. It takes basically a PowerPoint presentation, but you can put pollings, you can put drawings, you can put a quiz in there, you can add in video, all kinds of things that you can add in within the PowerPoint. And the students access the PowerPoint, and you can see what they're doing from the teacher end, and the students download the app to their cell phone or device or computer, and then they log in with a special login, and then they can do the assignment and follow along, and they can only go as far as you're going because it follows what you do. So this is a great way to use the PowerPoint with your students. And this is how they join a session. They enter a PIN, and this is what they see. They're downloading the PowerPoint, and this is the view that they'll see. This is like, this one here asks them to put their pointer and click on the words that have to do with what, I forgot what it was having to do with. When they get to this slide, they're going to view this video. They click on it. This also shows you the layout for the teacher by letting you know that a video is coming up, then question and answer, and that's where you insert that information and link it to that slide. So it's very easy to use. It sounds complicated, but it's very easy, and it walks you through on how to set up the PowerPoint and add in all of those different options. And then the students, when they log in, they just downloads to their device, and they can follow right along with you. And this is an example of one of the questions. Can you explain what a verb is? Yes or no. They don't even have to say anything, but you'll get the feedback as to, in this one, in this case, you'll see who did and who can or cannot, and circle the words that are verbs. This is what the student sees, and then once they've done all the verbs ones, then they click send. That's true. That's true. But it's a little anonymous, so they don't have to feel embarrassed. They can hopefully film and give a more honest feedback to you and let you know if they are really struggling. And do you want to send this drawing? You click yes, because they can actually draw something in there other than just clicking on the words. And these are the different plans. I know this screen is hard to see, but you can check out the different plans that they offer. But you know, the free one's always good, and the free one does just what you need, but it only has you up to 30 licenses. So once you use that PowerPoint, if you want to keep reusing it, that's fine, but you can only go up to 50 megabytes. So those are some things you might want to consider if you're planning on using this. 50 megabytes is pretty big, and each presentation is up to 20 megabytes. So that's something to definitely check out. This is my contact information, and I really appreciate everybody joining tonight and watching the recording. I'd love to get your information. I know I went through things very, very quickly. I'll type in the, I'll post the Livebinder link, or you can just go to tinyurl.com/designtcea14, because I'm speaking at TCEA this week. And that's what this was in preparation for. That's the link to the survey. And if there are questions that I missed, feel free to contact me or put them on the survey, and I'll get back to you. For those who are watching the recording, feel free to do the same. And this is my blog here that you can always contact me through, or my email. And you can always scan the QR code as well from the recorded session or in this live session. Oh, thank you, Peggy. I appreciate that. Thanks for fixing that. And you can click on that link that Peggy just posted from the recorded session. And this is the Livebinder's link as well. So thank you again for joining tonight or watching the recording. And if you're at TCEA, come find me on Wednesday at noon in the Digital Square area, and that's where I'll be presenting. So take care, everybody, and definitely stay warm. I know it's another storm hit New York last night, or today actually, not last night. And have a great evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining.